In the overnight, the Florida Maquis channel crossed over 20,000 subscribers, and that has everything to do with having the absolute best audience on YouTube, bar none. We cover a lot of different subjects here. Primarily it's been the Fitzgerald, a lot of South America, the issue with the USS John McCain, and a few others, but in today's video I thought we would go over basically a compendium of 15 different lies, inconsistencies, or unexplained events with the Fitzgerald in a way that I think it will make it all coalesce, also using some of the help that we've got, some of the best Navy contributors that have come to the channel that have brought their expertise into this investigation. A lot of you know I'm an Army guy. I was an investigator, and so the learning curve on the Navy thing was very steep. But I do know when people are lying. And watching that first press conference 377 days ago, knew something was up. So one of the things we do here at the Maquis is we try not to make anything overproduced and super slick, just because that's just not what we're about. We're about the facts, and we're going to get right to them. Now, let me zoom out here. I'm going to pull this over center. Now, this is just straight up notepad. This is all this is. And I just did this from memory this morning. We'll go ahead and maximize this out so we can read it a little easier. 15 different lies, inconsistencies, and unexplained events. I tried to go chronologically. So here we go. Incorrect timing of the collision stated 3 times, 48 hours later, by then 7th Fleet Commander Joseph Aucoin during his press conference. A lot of you know about that. Literally within a day, the commander of the 7th Fleet came out, had a press conference, and in videos we showed this where 3 separate times he said the collision timing was 0220 when it was actually 0130. In that same press conference, he committed to full cooperation with all interested parties during that same press conference, only to see it revoked days later. The only people having access to the crew of the Fitzgerald was the U.S. Coast Guard and the U.S. Navy. Number 3, and this is one I caught a lot of crap for, but I still think it was huge. Secret underwater welding teams completely cover and destroy all evidence of the collision below the waterline, lying about it being necessary when we saw the USS Cole, that had a hole much, much larger, be put aboard a heavy lift ship and brought all the way back to the United States with no such patching. Number 4, the first preliminary report stated no one aboard the bridge called general quarters after this collision, which anybody in the Navy at this point would say, okay, now that's total bullshit. Allegedly, the DCA, the damage control officer, was asleep, was awoke, and got dressed, went to the CIC, and then called general quarters. Unbelievable. Number 5, the initial reporting that we got about the cargo ship was that it was on autopilot, the crew was asleep. That explained that 30-minute delay before it turned around and came back. Later, all that being retracted, now knowing the captain was aboard the bridge, awake, in manual control of his ship, and had sight of the Fitzgerald, and was attempting to contact it, and with all of that, still hit it. Knowing where it was, attempting to not hit it, apparently did hit it. It's insane. The biggest coincidence in the history of coincidences. No report of this alleged 0130 collision by either the destroyer or the cargo vessel until 0220, when both ships, independently of each other, having had no communication with each other, both simultaneously reported exactly at 2:20, one to the Japanese Coast Guard and the other one to the command authority of the 7th Fleet. Here's another one that a lot of people didn't miss. The lieutenant, junior grade, Sarah Kopic, that states in sworn testimony she was shouting their coordinates into a radio for hours when she was talking about having these coordinates tattooed on her wrist in sworn testimony, but the Navy report stated that the radios were dead from seawater intrusion 45 minutes after the collision. So where does this shouting coordinates into radio for hours come from? The captain of the cargo vessel told GG Press the same day of the collision that the two vessels were sailing in the same direction at the time of the collision, but the Navy report states that they were sailing perpendicular. This was one of the biggest pieces of evidence we were able to uncover. The cargo vessel was not using a standard SOLAS-approved AIS transponder prior to and immediately after the collision, changing their reporting rates at least 5 times. And we've showed this in many videos where they were reporting in the 5-second paradigm, which would be a Class B transponder, only switching to the 10-second paradigm 30 minutes after the alleged collision time of 2:57 in the morning. Number 10. In the hours after the collision, the cargo vessel, having suffered no critical damage, inexplicably moved to the other side of Oshima Island, stopped and loitered for nearly 5 hours, transmitting vessel not under command, which would erase its black box data in the process. Number 11. The U.S. Navy restricted all access to the destroyer crew and made them sign non-disclosure agreements. Here we are 377 days later, and we have not a single crew member having spoken independently to the press, which was not the case in the collision with the Porter or the Cole. In fact, the Cole they've made TV series out of using sailors that were actually aboard. Number 12. The final official Navy report stated that no physical lookout duties were performed on the starboard side of the Fitzgerald, but literally 2 pages later in the same report, they state that the junior officer of the deck did in fact visually sight the crystal twice prior to the collision. So the report lies with itself. And number 13. The final official Navy report also states that the automated identification system aboard the Fitzgerald was not utilized, but in sworn testimony, Lieutenant Arian Woodley, who was in the CIC when this happened, testified that he noticed the ACX crystal closing in on the Fitzgerald's position using the AIS. Another lie. Number 14. The Navy report states the radar systems were not functioning aboard the Fitzgerald a full 1 hour prior to the collision because of some maintenance issue, but the timeline states that the officer of the deck plotted a radar track on the vessel thought to be the crystal 13 minutes prior to the collision. And finally, number 15, in an unexplained odd coincidence, the Navy report shows an intended track of the Fitzgerald exactly mimicking the position and course of the only underwater cable in that region, the accident literally occurring over a turning point where the officer in charge at that time was stated that she'd considered making a turn that followed that cable to 240 degrees. 15 different, that's literally almost one a month that we found going through this story, and still the Florida Maquis is the only one reporting it. Now, I brought up a couple of videos to kind of highlight some of those points. One of the things we're going to do real quick, though, is I have been remiss. This is USN Brendan. As aforementioned, some of the best contributors to our channel have been from the Navy. We had USN for America, USN Brendan, Captain Tom Guam Buckley, another captain, a lot of great contributors. Here he talks about this story about the Arian Woodley, the AIS picking up the ship and then swinging that camera around to watch the bow of the Crystal slam into the Fitzgerald, which is total ridiculousness, and he does this. He explains this in detail. We'll go up here real quick. This is the video that we did on, I believe, the 12th. Yes, 5/12. Fitzgerald dead, EMP confirmed. You can read this for yourself. It's down in the comments. Just look for USN Brendan. And he states something here that I had actually missed. So many comments, sorry about this, that I didn't see it at the time because I would have covered it. What he's talking about here are the lockouts, that these cameras that they use to swing around, they have lockouts so that you literally can't swing the gun around and basically shoot the bridge off of the ship. So there's a one on the front and one on the rear. So for this to have been done, you would have needed computer input, and this guy says that he did it manually at night with no moon while they were moving at 20 knots and in less than a minute. And this is all explained by someone who was actually serving aboard a Navy vessel who would know. And he basically talks about this. And I'll just take this one comment out of here. What in the actual fuck? Seriously, at that range and bearing to target, I'm telling you, now each one of those 5-inch guns would have been swinging real damn close to not smack up to the lockouts that prohibit muzzle from physically making any more rotation, unless it moves back in the opposite direction. The math alone makes a hell of a challenging to virtually impossible task, sighting in manually the ACX crystal by one or both of the 5 inches gun's muzzle optics. Add in the fact that it was the dead of a moonless night, and it just didn't happen. He said the GM didn't see that bow of the ACX crystal prior to impacting the starboard side, just forward of center line, because he's saying it would have had to swing all the way back around. And now take into the fact that they're moving 20 knots and there's no scraping aboard the ship. This is exactly coming from a Navy guy, so USN Brendan, well done. This video here we did on the 15th, where we talk about where they reveal that the AIS was being used, but in the report, we've showed this 1,000 times. 8.2, Seamanship and Navigation. 0.9, from the Navy. Let's see if I can scroll up to it here. Did not utilize the AIS, but now we have clearly testimony that says the contrary. And we had found this out on the 11th. So we have all sorts of information and testimony. Here we're going to also just cover, since we have it in front of us, this idea of not having anyone perform lookout duties right here in the middle. Sorry about this. Watchstanders performing physical lookout duties did so only on Fitzgerald's port side, when we can go right down to the same report talking about the exact same event literally right below it. And we can look and see right here that at 0120 hours, the watchstander responsible for immediate support of the officer of the deck, the JOOD, reported sighting crystal visually. Literally, their report lies with itself. You don't even need me. You could just take this report and show the inconsistencies. So, this is where we are. 377 days later, and we don't have anything remotely like the truth. This video here, I was looking for it. This is the one where we picked up the change in the reporting rate, where right at 250, all of a sudden it changes from the 5-second to the 10-second paradigm, which doesn't occur natively aboard either a Class B or a Class A. 5-second is Class B and 10-second is Class A. There's no way that could possibly be happening with just one transponder. So this is where we've been, and this is where we've started. So thank you, everyone, so much for all of the support. We're going to continue to look into things and also keep up on this story as much as we can. But like I said, it is about you guys. It is about the contributors to the Florida Maquis, those who have joined us at Patreon. Yesterday, we actually gave out our first assignment, our first psychological operations assignment. White hat, of course, just to engage people in a conversation about something that you might not know about. I'm going to leave the details because it's need to know. But if you want to be involved in that and get read in on that, head over to the www.patreon.com/Florida Maquis, all one word, and you'll be able to find us there and join us in intelligence and psychological operations training. But 14 minutes, we will leave it there. Like, share, subscribe, and we will see you next time. Thank you.